What is up, Jabronis? JJ back here with Snyder. Talking a little college football today. Snyder, I'm so used to working on you with the golf stuff. It's nice, refreshing, if you will, to talk a little college football with you. And excited to break down DFS. We did DFS last week as well on this show. So it went pretty well. I mean, I know we talked heavily on stacking Ohio State, on stacking that game in general. As a lower leverage play or high leverage, lower ownership type of stack. And yeah, I mean, that absolutely smashed. And multiple people that were at the top all had, big names in that game. So excited to talk a little more DFS again today. And of course, give out some best bets. But Snyder, how you been?
Doing well. Kind of missed you the last few weeks. We were on that golf betting show for the majority of the summer. That was a fun time. I'm excited for that to come back in this new next year as the season restarts here in January. I'm not sure when we'll restart that bet show, but yeah, last week I seen me, you, Big T were at the top of those leaderboards, stacking that game up, and just didn't work out well for us there at the end. I mean, Tony almost shipped, probably should have. He had the damn near the nuts in that with that $20 secondary tournament. I seen you were right up there and me and Tony were up there. I mean, that was fun time. It was a fun game. We'll find some more winners here this weekend. Keep that a rolling.
Love it. Yeah, because I have a few spots that I think you could get some low leverage plays in today. And I'm interested to see, who you like as well. Quick shout out to the people in the chat: Best Pie Eater, Adam, Chris, Uncle T, Natsify, and Joey Cobra. So I'll start with giving a bet I like for the 1 o'clocks. 12 o'clock games. So it'll play right into the DFS narrative as well. So Clemson team total over 30.5 points. Currently plus 105 on DraftKings in New Jersey. To me, now it is a little painstaking that Clemson's going to be missing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Snyder, their two best receivers.
Yeah, two of their better receivers. They're undoubtedly their best receiver. Justin Ross will be out, and E.J. Williams looks like it's going to miss the game as well.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess the only silver lining is like Clemson doesn't have that like typical freak at wide receiver. Like I feel like even Ross is kind of like, I don't want to say downgraded since last year, but hasn't looked the same, right? And even who's the other guy? Pronounce his name Nagata or Gata?
Yeah.
I mean, even him, like his volume hasn't been great. I mean, I guess the whole part is Clemson's offense hasn't really been in sync, which I guess is kind of why all these numbers look the way they do. For me, though, they play Wake Forest here, who's practically the fastest team in the conference. Wake Forest could give a shit about playing defense. So for me, I get a slow paced team in Clemson that's going to look to control the game, and they're going to be sped up organically by Wake Forest by how fast they play, how quick their drives are. And also it should put more pressure on Clemson to score because, look, Wake Forest has a really good offense. So I like this spot for Clemson. I know that, you look at their game logs, and I think that they've only gone over 20 points against like one D1 opponent or, two D1 opponents. So I know it's a scary spot, but it's all correlated in why this number is so low. Look, teams at will can put up 30 plus on Wake Forest. And again, it has more to do with the pace they play at. They don't play very good defense. And they put a lot of pressure on their opponents to score because they score. Really like the spot for Clemson here, over 30.5. Again, I know they're missing two of their big receivers, but it's not like they've been like critical pieces of their offense all year long. So what do you think of that play, Snyder, where I think, we're getting correlated movement? Like to me, normally in this case, like this number would be like 34.5 for Clemson. But when you add the injury woes, when you add how poor Clemson's looked on offense all year, to be honest, there's also a decent amount of defenses in their conference. Wake Forest is just not one of them, though. So what are your thoughts on that? And how does it relate on the DFS end of things as well? Because a bunch of cheap guys in that game.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking to target Wake Forest quite a bit this year on the DFS side. They play super fast. They concentrate their offense on a couple of receivers mainly. For Clemson side, though, with those receivers being out, I think we got a couple of solid value options there. That Bo Collins, 4,500 on DraftKings. He saw 9 targets and 10 targets his last 2 games. I think he'll be a focal point this week. And another guy you brought up there pre-show, Dakari Collins, 3,500. He got 12 targets last week. I think he's going to be another guy that's firmly in play. I mean, we got a couple of solid value plays that'll help get some of these studs in that we want to target on as we go on forward here.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see the common stacks, at least from how I see the slate, is you're going to see the people going very cheap at QB, um, and like I said, the cheap punt Clemson receivers, and then you can go real heavy at running back. You can even stack in a few extra receivers, big receivers. You'll just have yourself a lot of money. As far as roster construction in DFS, Snyder, I'll kick this back to you for this slate. What do you think is the most? Like, I personally think that's going to be the most popular stack, where you go super cheap at 2 QBs, Clemson wide receivers, punt Clemson wide receivers, and then just go heavy everywhere else. Because at that point, you're going to have like a 7,500 to 8K range to stack big names in your lineup. What are your thoughts on how slate construction looks today?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to go to that Boston College quarterback, Jerkovich, at 4,500. That's really cheap. We have some really good value options at the running back position too, that like Rashawn Johnson's 3,800. He's going to see looks like the starting role for Texas. Another guy I like is this Kevion Lee, cheap running back for Penn State, 3,600. Another value option, I think Hassan Haskins is going to be one of the most popular running backs in Michigan. Starting running back. It doesn't sound like Corum. I don't believe Corum's going to play. I mean, he didn't play last week, and which was like their game of the year. I mean, they needed to win last week, and they didn't put him out there this week. So I have a hard time seeing them put him out this week, as they have that big game coming up as well. For receivers and such, I think the main game stack is going. People are going to be looking to Ohio State again. I mean, they have a huge implied team total. That total has moved up to 70. So I think that's a great game to stack up this week, like we did that Ohio State Purdue. I think we're just going to put in Thorne, and I like Reed as the Michigan State run back. You can stack up Stroud with Olave, Wilson. I don't think Jackson Smith is going to be as highly owned, at least on DraftKings with his elevated price tag, but on FanDuel, he's got the good price tag over there. So I would look to target him more so on like the FanDuel side.
What's your thoughts on Desmond Ritter today? Because out of every quarterback in the higher priced range, he's not as high as some people on this list. Pound for pound, though, at 8,900, he's actually my favorite quarterback on the slate. And the main reason for this is, look, we know since he's been kind of sleepwalking for the past few weeks, and everybody's been talking about, they got to watch out for the SMU offense. And, SMU will 100% speed this team up, and SMU 100% will give up a lot of chunk plays to Cincinnati today. And to me, I don't even think you need a perfect game script, because Cincinnati is going to do their best to score every possession in this game. It's not like no matter how many points they go up or how many points they go down, it's not going to – they're looking for style points, and this is the type of game that can earn them style points. SMU's a respected team. They've had a good season thus far, and Cincinnati hasn't played a lot of good teams. This is the type of game where Cincy can run up the score. And Ritter, when this team has big games offensively, it's always Ritter. So what are your thoughts on him? Like I said, I think he's the best play on the slate at 8,900. I know that if you pair him with Jerkovic, or if you even take him with the Clemson quarterback to be a little different. I just think, pound for pound, he's got 40 burger written on him today. What do you think, Senator?
Yeah, I really like Ritter as well. He's actually in my core as well. I think this is a game where Cincinnati is going to be a little more sped up. They're going to be looking to throw the ball a lot more. Jerome Ford doesn't look to be 100%. He's a little nicked up, missed last game. I think it's going to be Ritter's actually relied more on his feet the last couple of weeks. He's had 11 and 9 carries in the last 2 games. I really like the cheap receivers we get with Cincinnati here too. I mean, we got Josh Wiley at 5,200. 5 targets last game. Trey Tucker's another one I like at 3,500 to pair up with Ritter. Ritter saw 6 targets last game. He's seeing right around the same about yards per game as a lot of these guys. And I think this is really going to be that one spot where Cincinnati has to put their foot to the pedal early in this game. I mean, they can't come out sluggish against this SMU team, or else they're going to be in a rough shape, I feel like. I mean, they've had some trouble coming out early against some of these sluggish teams, and I really like this spot for him this week to come out with a bang. SMU, if you're going to look to stack it back up, I like going more with that Grant Calcaria. He's a tight end over there. When Cincinnati played Notre Dame, the tight end Michael Mayer over there, he lit him up for, 8 for 90 yards, I think. 8 catches, 90 yards. And Cincinnati does have a couple of really good cornerbacks, and I think they're going to be more so locked up on Danny Gray, Rasheed Rice, and Reggie Robertson Jr., leaving the tight end open more so over the middle. And another value running back is in this game as well, though, like Bentley. He's 3,800, 15 carries last week. I think he's going to be a popular play as well this week when you're looking for value plays in that running back range.
As I look at this slate entirely, and you brought up a bunch of good names, there's just so much value all over the slate. It makes it tough, but I'll tell you this, Snyder, with all the value on the slate at flex positions, you almost think that maybe you can earn yourself some leverage by fading Jerkovic at the top. I mean, so many people are going to play him, but man, like if Jerkovic just has like an average game, like a paltry 18 or 20 points, which would get him to value per se. But if you're talking on winning tournaments, there's just so much extra money that goes around or that's going around in this slate. You can, I mean, if you just get your quarterbacks right, where they get you 4 or 5x, and we know at DFS between quarterback, running backs, you can get guys that just put up monster days. Look, I like Stroud again today. My issue, though, with him specifically is now he's going to be popular. Like last week, he wasn't popular at all, right? So this week, he's going to be more popular. Has the big week. They bounce back again. Another big game where they should be able to score a ton of points. But like I said, I think overall, from a leverage standpoint, I think Stroud is likely going to be slightly higher owned than Ritter. And yeah, for me, Ritter all the way on my end at that price. I didn't even have the price savings, but it's all about kind of finding that right rhythm. I think you're going to need multiple lineups today, though, Snyder, to really hit something because there's just so much value all over the place that you got to get yourself exposed to all of it. At least try to anyway.
Yeah, I think in my builds, I built 30 lineups for that GPP, and I put a cap on Jerkovic at 20%, I believe. I mean, if he gets you like 15, 20 points, I mean, that's not going to be enough this week, I don't think. And I think that's a good leverage play in GPPs is getting off of him and going to some of these other guys. I'll get down to a game here later or next, once we get into one of these later games, that I think one of my favorite games to target is going to be very, very low owned.
Okay, yeah, let's move on to the 3 o'clocks. And by the way, Mangone, thank you for noticing that the second chain is back on today. It's been off for a while. We've taken a break from the Figaro, but we're back. We're back. Okay, so another game I like in the 3 o'clock area, Colorado, Washington, under 43 points, currently minus 110 at DraftKings. Yesterday, this was 43.5 at most spots. 43 is still okay. So I know you might look at the box scores of both these games between the Huskies, Buffaloes, but and all the extra points. But when you really break these teams down in terms of like yards per play, points per play, these two teams are snails on offense. They move the ball extremely slow. They don't exactly rush anything that they do. And these teams are far better defensively than offensively. These are also two of not so much the better defenses in the Pac-12, but two of the more respectable defenses, at least in this conference. And yeah, Colorado has given up a ton of points to many different opponents, but Washington's not going to try to bury this team. So it's like, yeah, Colorado can give up points in bunches to good teams, but good offenses. Washington's not a good offense. And I think when I look at this at 43.5, this has got like legitimately rock fight written all over it. Teams probably not taking too many chances. Washington ultimately needs to win this game. So, I think you're going to get a better version of them, but you're not going to get the version of them that's going to try to go all out to stomp on Colorado either. But like I said, overall, I get two snails who both play better defense than offense, who both are more than content to punt the ball on 4th and 2s and 4th and 3s at midfield instead of going for it. Teams that are both happy to concede points and take their field goals when they have the opportunities to get points on the board. Overall, this should play like a slow rock fight. And this is a total that really should be 40-ish or under. I think they're hanging at 43 because it's hard to put a total at 40 in this conference. But these are your two snails of this conference. And meeting up head-to-head, they're going to get a good defensive clash. What do you think, Snyder?
Yeah, I don't really have much of a opinion on that Colorado-Washington game. It just doesn't really – it's got a 43.5 point total. I don't really tend to look at those types of games and such.
It's a low total, and I'm seeing now they don't even have it on the DFS slate, so I could see why. I could see why you're not on it at all.
Right, yeah.
In this 3 o'clock window, Snyder, or 3:30 window, what's a game you're targeting or like for DFS?
Yeah, so if I'm going to play that Jerkovic, I'm looking to leverage that with stacking Alabama. I don't think anybody's going to be touching this Alabama game. They've got to apply a team total of 40 points. I could see them putting even 50, 55, 60 on this porous Arkansas defense. I mean, Alabama's going to be looking to come out for blood and bury these teams as the end of the season comes. I mean, playoff seeding is going to be huge. They need all they can. I mean, if they're going to have that showdown with Georgia in the SEC title game, and it's big controversy is, will they let a 2-loss Alabama team in? And that'll definitely be interesting. But Bryce Young completely going overlooked. He's got a high price tag, but I think you can pair him up with Brian Robinson Jr. High price tag as well. Nobody's going to go to him, but he's just been an absolute on a tear this year, averaging just about 100 yards a game. I really like Jamison Williams over John Mechie. He's a little bit priced higher, so nobody's going to play him at all either. He's seen about double-digit targets on the year. He's averaging over 100 yards a game. I mean, he's found the end zone quite a few times here recently. John Mechie's another guy you could pair him up with. I would go with, if I'm going to play Bryce Young, I might look to double stack him. I'm definitely doing that on FanDuel, where there's some other good value options over there as well, so it's pretty easy to fit that in there. But I think this Alabama team's just going completely overlooked, and I think they're going to put up a lot of points this week and score a lot of points that people aren't going to be on.
I really like the look, and I think that you're right with the Alabama total being around 40.5. That's a true smash spot for them to go over, because they're also a team looking for style points these days, because they know in the back of their mind that Georgia game late in the year becomes their national championship. If they lose, there is a chance they're not going to make it into the natty ship. But here's my thing is, like, you watch all these teams play. In my opinion, Alabama's probably the only team that could give Georgia a fight. Ohio State's good, but I have some concerns over their defense. But, I guess, we'll never know, because that Ohio State offense is pretty legit, and Georgia certainly hasn't seen an offense like that. But they will when they see Bama. So interested to see how that game goes. Okay, so thoughts on Ohio State, Oklahoma. I mean, I'll tell you this. Look, Oklahoma's been steamed down at 3.5, and deservedly so, right? Because I think if you argue, Oklahoma's not who we thought they were coming into the season. You're getting adjusted lines, but like these lines could be wrong from onset. I don't even know if I've bet any Oklahoma games this year. They've just been a tough team for me to figure out. It's like, because right now I'd argue there's value in the marketplace betting Oklahoma, primarily because the market is so down on them. But it's just a spot I don't want any part of. I think at 3.5 right now, man, it's tough to want to feel good back in Iowa State when you had a better number available for you, a few days ago, a much better number available for you a few days ago. So I'll pass on the game. I think Caleb Williams does make a difference for this team, but it's still very early to tell. From a DFS, just to be clear, it makes a difference versus Spencer Rattler. What are your thoughts on that game for DFS purposes, Snyder? Do you think you get any ownership in any direction there?
I don't think many people are going to be looking at this Oklahoma team. I mean, it's been so tough to target this team from a DFS standpoint, as it's really hard to get a gauge on where they're going to go with the ball through the air and such. I think Caleb Williams definitely has the ceiling. Pretty high team total in this game, 59.5 team or total in the game. I would look to pair Caleb Williams with Jaden Hasselwood if I was going to stack this game up. Hasselwood's been the main guy. He's got the highest target share on the team. Kennedy Brooks is the guy who was seeing good volume here about 2, 3, 4 games ago, but his carries have went down the last 2 games, so that's kind of troublesome there. From the Iowa State side, you've got Breece Hall. He's one of the best running backs in the league. He's averaging 115 yards a game, just an absolute complete workhorse for him, seeing 65% of the carries for the season. Brock Purdy, I mean, it's past Brocktober, but he's right there under 7K. I mean, he's a solid option in this game. I mean, I'd look to pair him up with Xavier Hutchinson or, Charlie Kohler. Charlie Kohler's the tight end. Good value option on the slate 4,500. Seen double-digit targets in the last 2 weeks. He's seen about a 22% target share in this offense this year. Xavier Hutchinson's more of the big play downfield threat. He's seen about 80 yards a game. Right there, 9.3 targets per game. I mean, he's seeing good volume. So that's where I would go from the Iowa State side. But I just really don't have as much interest in this game fully for DFS this week. But that's the ways I would look to attack it.
Yeah, I think from a leverage standpoint, if you're building a bunch of lineups, I think it does make sense to go Breece on one side and Caleb Williams on the other. Because I do think you're right. I think it's going to be a very low-owned game in general. And, from a leverage standpoint on a slate like this where there's value everywhere, you got to take shots in some directions. And that would be, to me, that's an educated risk because, again, you're going to get these guys at low ownership. We talked about Williams' ceiling. We know Breece Hall's ceiling. So, I think that's a decent pivot for you, especially if you're building like anywhere between like 6+ lineups, 6-ish lineups or more. I think it makes sense to throw Hall and Caleb together in the same game. In the event that game shoots, you'll have plenty of options. Now I know from our Discord, I was asked to talk on FIU and North Texas, which that game's at 7:00, and we could slide to 7:00, slide to some of the later games as well, Snyder, or you could talk on a few more of the DFS games like in this main slate. But for this game, Florida International North Texas, what do you look? If you truly need to bet this game in particular, and look, I've bet a few North Texas games this year. I bet a few Florida International games this year. Butch Davis, the FIU head coach, I believe, did he get fired this past week or week and a half? I don't know if he actually got fired from FIU in the past week and a half, but I know that he made some pretty interesting comments about FIU as a athletic school. Basically implied that, we've been getting hand-me-downs from other colleges for equipment. Anything I ask for money-wise, it gets rejected. What does that do to the FIU locker room, right? So, look, FIU's been a bad team to begin with. North Texas, the one thing we can say about them is, first of all, that they at least can score offensively. Okay, this is a team that when you break down their numbers, first of all, they play at a blaze, and they actually have guys that, yes, can move the ball downfield. My issue with this game is what's going on in that FIU locker room right now. There's some interesting wrinkles to it. Do the FIU players really try to step up today for their coach, who they knew wasn't getting the resources he needed to succeed in that role? Or is talent just too big of a discrepancy with the squad and North Texas can roll over this team? It is hard to imagine North Texas blowing out anybody. But again, when you talk about the situation that this game is from a narrative perspective, it is tough to think Florida International gets up and loves playing today. But look, we've seen crazier things happen. I just think I never really like targeting games where you have an interest, where you have a wrinkle at head coach, whether it's a new head coach for a game or an interim head coach or coaching drama. To me, it becomes too much to handicap because at that point, the numbers might not mean anything, right? So because it could be, whatever's going on during the week with the specific head coach. And like I said, FIU's got a lot of beef in that locker room right now. So I'll stay away from the game. But, again, my thoughts would be, look, North Texas likely wins this game. Do they win it by double digits? That I don't know, which is ultimately why I'll be off it.
Yeah, they are off, 3 straight wins. And, the only thing just off first look, just my basic looking at this game is they've won 3 straight games. They've blown out a couple teams there by, I guess, only blowing out one team at Southern Miss. But they do have UTSA coming up next week. Could be a look-ahead spot. Don't you think they're on the road with a big ranked opponent coming up next? That's just interesting to think about, I think.
Yeah, it definitely could be. I will tell you this: their recent schedule has been a bit smoke and mirrors. So Southern Miss is like the worst team in the conference. I know that they upset. I know that they upset yesterday against Louisiana Tech, but they basically, I don't know if you know this about Southern Miss, but they have that Frank Gore Jr. kid.
Yeah, I watched him last night
at running back playing quarterback. So it's just a weird team. And then UTEP is another team that doesn't really score. They play decent defense, but they don't score. And Rice, they played Rice without their starting quarterback. So I don't want to say they've been had good fortune recently, but they've they're winning the games they're supposed to. But they're a bit of smoke and mirrors in that sense. But again, they're playing another team like they've been playing that can't figure themselves out on offense, and they're all over the place. So yeah, going on trends, this should be a win for North Texas. But yeah, like I said, the locker room's an interesting situation over there at FIU. Okay, so TikTok Hall of Fame, anywhere to buy RPB gear? Right off the website, right, Snyder?
Yeah, I think runpuresports.com. Just go to that. There should be a store. There should be a store icon you can click on, and we've got some gear on there for you guys.
Yeah, 100% TikTok. If you just go to right on the main site I think it's like a right banner on the site. You can go right to the shop. Okay, so
there is one other game I was looking at targeting. I was looking to go right back to Purdue this week. Aiden O'Connell, 6,200 on DraftKings. I'm looking to pair him up. There's 3 options you can go with. David Bell is the obvious guy. His target share is just unreal this year. He's averaging 14 targets a game. Just a complete game changer on that offense. But they got a couple other guys that are value guys too. Milton Wright, 3,900, and Jackson Anthrop, 4,600. Anthrop was the guy that nobody was on last week. Damn near put up 40 for us last week. I am going to, in my Purdue builds, I did set a rule for max 2 of these guys. So in all my O'Connell stacks, I'll have max 2 of Bell, Wright, and Anthrop, but I really like this spot against Northwestern. They got a high team total here, right around 30 points. They're favored by double digits. They should mow over this Northwestern team. Northwestern's gave up a couple big games in the last 2-3 weeks, so I think this is a great spot for Purdue to lay the wood here again to this team.
Yeah, I like the spot, and I like what Purdue's offense has been doing. And now they draw the tomato can of the Big Ten in Northwestern, and you would figure Purdue's going to be able to do whatever they want offensively. My question for you is, if you were to choose this game to stack, who, if anybody, would you run back on Northwestern?
I don't think I would be running anybody back with Northwestern. Here, I'm just scrolling down on their stuff.
Well, maybe Robinson. At least he gets.
Stephen Robinson Jr. He's seen 10 targets and 9 targets the last 2 games. He's seen about 24% of the market share there, but I just don't know if he's got enough to get it done there. I mean, the quarterback situation looks a little shaky there, so probably just a skinny stack with that Purdue team and running another stack back with it from another game.
Nice. I'll tell you what, from a value perspective, though, Robinson doesn't look like a bad play at all. I mean, the dude's like a 15, 16-point machine. He's 4,500 if he happens to get in the box today, which he could as Purdue speeds teams up. That's an interesting look.
Definitely interesting spot to bring it back with for sure.
Okay, so last but not least bet from me, pretty big game tonight, Snyder. Utah and Oregon, as the cool kids say. Yeah, I really like Utah -3 here. And I'll be honest, this line doesn't make any sense to me. I know this might sound silly. Utah should be 7 here. You break these teams down in terms of yards per play, points per play. Utah's better than this team in every category. And Utah's also home today for this game. So yes, Oregon's had, and when you compare strength of schedules, these teams have had nearly identical strength of schedules. Now Utah has a few more losses. Obviously, they've hiccupped on a few different games. And I think that's why this line might only be 3, but like I said, Utah has not lost at home. And sure, there's some big players on Oregon, and Oregon's offense has been good, but their defense has been even better, I'd argue. I just think it's a very difficult place to go to in Utah. And I know that everybody loves or wants this Oregon team to move far, but the only reason people are high on Oregon is literally because they beat Ohio State. If they don't win that game, people have a whole different perception of Oregon. And let's be honest, I mean, Ohio State outgained them in that game. The fumble was the big difference in that game for Ohio State. Needless to say, I think Oregon's overrated, and I think Utah's underrated, and I think you're getting a perfect spot here, laying the number of 3 with Utah, where Oregon should not be the 3rd best team in the country. And look, they might prove me wrong, where they might pull off a couple wins here in a row with the toughest part of their schedule coming up, starting tonight. But for me, I can't look past certain factors. Again, normally when you break down teams in this fashion, where you break down how well they do offensively on a per play basis, how many points they score on a per drive basis, how they do in those same categories on defense. Normally, when you see a line like this, it would normally indicate that the road team is better in some of these scenarios, and the problem is they're not. So I think Oregon's getting too much love in the marketplace, and that's why this number is what it is. Either way, it's like a complete smash spot. This should be 7. So give me Utah -3. It's my favorite bet of the day. What do you think, Snyder?
Yeah, I like that for sure. I'm not really looking at too much from this game for a DFS standpoint besides on FanDuel. I do really like TJ Pledger. He looks to be probably the best play on FanDuel from a value standpoint. 6,000 on FanDuel at the running back position. That's just great value. That's going to allow you to buy up and stack up these high-power offenses, as it's tougher to stack up multiple games on FanDuel, as it's tough. Sometimes it feels like it's tougher to find value over there, especially in the running back position. But TJ Pledger looks to be a great spot there. 25 carries last week. I saw some work in the pass game as well the last few weeks. So I'm looking at TJ Pledger as pretty much my only option here. I mean, Travis Dye has just been on another level this year as well.
Yeah.
When you're looking at Oregon, but I really don't like stacking Oregon's pass game up. It's just so tough to figure out who's getting the ball as they spread the ball to 6, 7, 8 guys every game.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to mention one other thing, because our boy Chwadi's in the chat. It seems like Chwadi never gets Pittsburgh games wrong, between you and Tyler, Chwadi. So look, he likes our team total over today. At least I would assume. You could confirm if you want, Chwadi. But I'd assume, what is that number? That number's got to be what, like 37.5-ish?
40.25 is their implied team total I'm seeing.
Yeah. So yeah, and let's be honest, like Pittsburgh's no stranger to piling up points. My only issue now versus what I liked about this team a few weeks ago was when Pittsburgh wasn't losing games, they had a lot of incentive to let Pickett pile up numbers for the Heisman. I mean, he's not going to win the Heisman with the losses they have now. So it does make it a little more difficult in that sense, but I still think he's one of the better passers of the football in college this year, which it's a relatively weak QB class. But I do think he's one of the standouts because the other guys that are in there, like Matt Corral, I'm not a fan of. I mean, look, he could develop into something, but any quarterback under Lane Kiffin, it's very difficult to trust because they play in such a smooth offense or a smooth offensive scheme. Brandon McNair, Purdue minus 10.5 seems too low. They win by 20. It's a good point. I mean, in terms of a bounce back spot, and it seems like Northwestern just gets beaten by everybody badly too. What do you take on that though? Because I would think what kind of scared me off this was my numbers were a little off on it. I actually had this up past 14.5. Whenever I see a discrepancy like that, my numbers versus the odds makers, it's like I usually just try to avoid it. But yeah, I have value on Purdue at that number. It just seems just a bad spot in general from a narrative standpoint with how Purdue plays. Purdue coming in last week with a lot of confidence. They get to play Ohio State. They're thinking everything's going to be good, and they just get their doors blown off them. So, coming into this game now, do they go back to confident version of Purdue and blow out Northwestern, or do they kind of hang on their morals and, maybe we're not as good as we thought we might have been? And so, yeah, it's a tough spot for me to like. And again, my numbers being so far off on the game, I'm just avoiding it in general. But yeah, I do have some value on Purdue there.
I do like that Pittsburgh side. We saw that message in there about Israel. I think he's a great value option at running back on both DraftKings and FanDuel at 5.3K on DK and 6.2K on FanDuel. He's seen double-digit targets the last 2 games. Seen some work in the past game as well. I really like Kenny Pickett. I think he's a great option. Jordan Addison, Jared Wayne, just great options as well to stack him up with. Jordan Addison has seen 12 targets, and 11 targets the last 2 games. He's been so consistent this year, seeing the highest market share. Already has over 1,000 yards this year, so I'm definitely looking at targeting Kenny Pickett quite a bit this week. And if I was going to run it back, it's probably going to be Keaton Thompson, especially on FanDuel. He's been a monster this year, seen pretty good target share, double-digit targets the last 3 games, so I definitely like that, bringing it back.
How many points do you think Brandon Armstrong is worth to the Virginia Cavaliers? Because I'll tell you this, I think he's worth like 4 touchdowns versus his backup. That offense looked awful without him last week. And to me, like, you want to talk about guys that pass the eye test. I mean, if you watch Armstrong play, it's not like Virginia's for years has ran this like 5 wide, Big 12 type of offense. I mean, Armstrong's putting up crazy numbers in a system that's just not designed to put up those types of passing numbers. I watch him play, and I just think he's really good. He's really good at navigating the pocket. Shame if it is, he's hurt. Who knows if he's going to end up playing in this game? When he's starting for Virginia, though, that offense, Fox, is one of the best in the country. When he's not in it, it goes from one of the best in the country to one of the worst in the country. They were so tough to watch in that Notre Dame game offensively with, like, they were running out different quarterbacks that all can't throw. They were just running these, like, hybrid read options. Anyway, so Armstrong's a pretty big deal. I don't know if we know for sure if he's going to play or not. I don't see any news there, but I think it's very difficult. I think it doesn't matter as it relates to the Pitt team total, because if he doesn't play, I think it likely means more possessions for Pitt. And if he does play, I think it means it's going to force Pitt to have to score more because he's going to move that offense down the field for Virginia. So I don't think it matters on the Pitt side, but if you're going to bet this game, you may best wait to get those official news. And Nadsvi says, he looks like he's going to be out, so you got to be off UVA. I can't blame you there.
I think he's going to be out, it sounded like. I mean, I don't think Brandon Armstrong's that good of a player as a whole, but, I mean, he's definitely been good fantasy-wise, and he definitely does seem to hold this team together pretty well. But I don't think he's going to be a guy moving on next level talent, but he definitely –
It's not you're hurting my feelings.
I'm bad.
No, it's all good. I do personally think he's actually a good quarterback, but I guess we'll see, because I think that and look, I'm with you too. The narrative on him for the last few seasons is he was just a dual threat guy that was, a bulldozer of sorts running the football and could leverage his legs to extend plays and find guys downfield. This year in particular, though, he has literally been slinging the ball all over the field. He just looked like a different player. Hopefully the injury doesn't derail him in other ways. But, I guess time will tell. I'm definitely bullish on Armstrong, but I could see why people wouldn't be. But yeah, I guess time will tell. And look, their coach Brock Mendenhall's, I think, done a good job with development of him as well. So I guess we'll see. But man, that is quite a drop off when he didn't play. He didn't play last week. Yikes. Brendan, I like the spot there. Grabbing Purdue first half instead of full game. I mean, again, it teaches own or her own, but just a spot I'm personally avoiding. Okay, so any other games anybody want us to discuss or go through? Feel free to just type in the chat and we'll knock it out for you. At least we'll try to. And Snyder, anything on the DS? So any other on the? Let me ask you this then. Maybe give your favorite high price option today in DFS and your favorite low price option in DFS for college. The main slate at 12.
Okay, let me look. Pull up my stuff. Favorite high priced like flex option is probably going to be, I think Hassan Haskins is just an unreal play this week. I've got him projected as probably the highest scoring player on this slate. Jahan Dotson and some of those Alabama guys, and some of those guys can rival him, but I think point per dollar, Hassan Haskins is going to be the best player on the slate today by quite a wide margin. I don't see Corn playing, and Maryland is not good at all. I mean, I think they're just going to bleed yards to him. For favorite, what was your next question?
I was just saying, so Haskins is an interesting play. I mean, obviously Maryland sucks, and his price is super cheap. What do you think Haskins comes in at ownership wise? I mean, I'd have to assume there's so much value on this slate and so many directions you can go with all the games they put in this, in this said slate. What do you think Haskins is on? 25%, 20%?
I think it's higher than that. I think his ownership pushes, 30-35% on this slate in select contests, like single entry and cash. I think he's going to be even higher than that.
Definitely could be, because I know that who was it last week that broke the Wisconsin running back versus Northwestern broke the slate. It just seems like not broke the slate, but he was like 60% on his cash. So if you didn't play him, you were basically drawn dead. Here it's kind of the same thing. Maryland can't stop the run, but again, you do have a different team playing Northwestern that people I'm sure will target or try to target some running backs for exposure with Purdue, I guess. And then on the cheaper end, who's your best cheap option? I'll say this: we know Jerkovic's going to be popular. Maybe who else down there lower wise? Could be a quarterback, could be a flex position that you like, and that you're as your favorite low priced option.
I'm going to go with Rashawn Johnson from Texas, 3.8K. He's playing at West Virginia. West Virginia's been, I think this game could be an ugly game, but I think with the workload he's going to see with him being boosted into the starting role here, I think he's got what it takes. He should be able to pay off that price tag with no problem here. I could see him getting, even up to 20-25 points in this game with a ceiling of, depending on how many times Texas can score in this game, he's got a ceiling for sure of probably 30 even.
That'd be something, wouldn't it? Okay, so, and what about overall favorite? There's a bunch of different games today in DFS. Favorite game to stack. Oh, and look at this.
Oh, Big T
coming in with the late game hammers.
Just made it in time. The kids' game went to triple overtime somehow on me.
Jeez.
It's rough.
Oh, you love it. Did they close out?
They didn't actually. They lost it in the third overtime. But
that's like that's like Nevada. It's like Nevada yesterday, scumbags. So yeah, I was just talking to Snyder. Snyder, I guess your favorite game to stack for DFS.
It's now leaning towards that Ohio State Michigan State game. I really like that. I don't think that game's going to be a popular full game stack. You can get Thorne in there cheap. You got Reed bringing it back there, and you can get Stroud, Olave, and Wilson in there too with those value running backs I was talking about. So I like that.
Now, Tony, what's your thoughts there? Because I know we discussed last week on the Ohio State situation, but we knew it was going to be low owned or low ownership in that game. This week, you're going to get spiked in ownership. So me personally, I'm not as big a fan of the game like I was last week, just because of you're going to have to overcome now higher ownership than you did last week. What's your thoughts on that game? Because Snyder's right. It's a smash spot. For there to be scoring. Prices are a little higher than last week, though, as well. But What are your thoughts there? Michigan State, Ohio State.
I definitely worry about Michigan State keeping the pace for sure. But, I think these Ohio State guys are locked. Stroud's a lock. One or two of the receivers minimum is a lock. And work off that. Michigan State side's the hardest. So I literally just sat back down. Is that other good receiver not playing?
I haven't seen anything. I don't think so.
Let me see. Yeah, I definitely think you can run it back. Here, I'm pulling my stuff up right now.
Yeah, I just seen Jalen Naylor is in street clothes.
Okay. So, I think the perfect run back is just to play Jaden Reed in my mind. He's projected high. Ohio State's been a little leaky against the pass, as we saw again last week with a couple guys getting there. So, yeah, that's where I'm starting my team. So I'm going to put my core up on the site right now too. But, Ohio State, Stroud, one or two pass catchers, even three if you're playing the huge tournament. I think that could get you different. Play all three of the receivers and run it back with one. But at least one or two, probably two for me would be my preference of those three. I think JSN is going to be very low owned for how good of a play he is. Everyone's going to play Wilson or Olave. I think JSN should be significantly lower owned than those two. And they're really the same play, all three of them in my mind. So, sure, Wilson's probably the best, but he's also going to be the highest owned. So that kind of equalizes them a little bit. I don't know. That's where I'm starting my teams. Bunch of value running backs. The teams feel pretty easy this week, honestly.
I just seen an update here. Sean Clifford update. The quarterback is now throwing passes in the end zone, but I guess I seen one status. One deal said his pregame status is unclear, and then another tweet just came out saying it looks like nothing is wrong. He has his helmet as well.
So I'll go to one of these questions here. So Syracuse NC State. So my favorite look in this game, Joel, and I didn't bet it, I want to be clear, but it would be the under at 49.5. I guess it depends what you get it at. It could be 50 pending your book. I liked it more at 52.5, but I don't like it here as being favorable. And here's really why though. Leary for NC State comes into this game off his best game of his career, or one of the best games of his career versus Wake Forest that was able to help them keep pace. He likely doesn't have that much fortune this time around. Syracuse, if you could say anything about this team, at least they play decent defense, and they should be able to slow down Leary. Leary is often a turnover machine too, and he relatively kept the ball from turning it over against Wake. He got picked twice, but he threw the ball a ton, so it was almost guaranteed he was going to have multiple interceptions. And on the Syracuse end, Syracuse just does not move the ball at all. Their quarterback sucks. They have the good running back, Sean Tucker, I think, over there. But look, Schrader's been taken over at quarterback for this team. They haven't been moving the ball at all. I just don't know how this game has points in it at this number. So yeah, call it a slight lean there under. I know you might have been looking for a side there. I just think it's very difficult to cap this game when you talk about Leary. It's very hard to imagine this dude throws for 450 yards again. He's not very good. And Syracuse offense doesn't move the ball against anybody. So I like the under there. Tony, as far as I don't know, Mangone just mentioned Naylor's out. Any other, as far as slate construction, you said you feel it's kind of easy as far as where value is, where it isn't. So you find yourself paying up for quarterback, paying down at running back. What's kind of your strategy been for this slate?
It's hard. The two chalk. The chalk's going to be Jerkovich, obviously, but man, he's 4,500. That's what I mean. The hard part is going to be getting different with these plays because, I guess if you don't play him, you're hoping he gets 18 or something and doesn't kill you. But man, at 4,500, we've played some dust balls for 4,500. And this guy's I'm not saying he's incredible, but man, against Florida State, when he's got some weapons 4,500.
Tony, what do you think about stacking Alabama up with Jerkovich? That's kind of the way I'm looking to get different.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody's going to play Alabama.
Yeah, and if I did, I would play those two stud receivers with him and just go all the way up. And yeah, that's the type of thing that could win a tournament. So I like that, Snyder.
I think, like I said, I think because I like the Clemson offense to score today, I think the problem is that because those receivers are out, I think the Clemson receivers are going to be chalky. because they're super cheap. But I don't mind that either. I think more or less you have to play one or the other. I think you could try to be different from Jerkovic if you play the Clemson quarterback, because he's not priced too much higher than him. He's only $1,400 more, and he legitimately could outscore him. And if he outscores him, Jerkovic, then you're in really good shape, because it's going to be much lower owned, and you could still play a big priced quarterback just because there's so much value on this slate. So for me, if I'm talking like what I would have done in cash, it would have been Ritter and Jerkovic in cash, and in GPPs it would very likely have been Ritter. And I always get the Clemson quarterback's name pronounced wrong. Ugalele.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it.
You don't need to pronounce it because he's been so bad all season. You shouldn't know how to pronounce it.
But this is a good spot for him. I mean, especially like I said, how Wake speeds teams up and Wake puts pressure on other teams to score. It's a good spot for this Clemson offense, because, man, if they can't right the ship here, I mean, I know it's been a down year for them anyway, but I'd have to imagine this team's going to look to go out on a high note, and at least beat Wake Forest is a good reminder to this conference that it's still Clemson's conference. What do you think of Ritter at quarterback, Tony? Because I think that
I'm off of Cincy. I've been off of them all year. I don't ever play quarterbacks. I know a lot of people do in college where you can just play them naked. I just don't do it. It's one of the things I just don't believe in. I don't know. Even if I played a guy like Ritter, I want some guys I feel good about. I mean, I can pay $600 more for Stroud, $200 more for Pickett, $900 more for Bryce Young. Even Caleb Williams, who I don't like that much, I would still play him over Ritter. Ritter's shown me nothing. Since he's showed me nothing. I live here. Even people here, I just don't. They might not be any good. I think they lose today. I don't. SMU.
I like the double
believer.
Yeah, I like the double digits there for sure with SMU. I think they could shock them if they come out slow here. I mean, they could be down 2-3 touchdowns before they know what hit them, I think.
So here's my thoughts though, because yes, Cincinnati's been kind of sleepwalking for a bunch of weeks now. They kind of came out a bit against South Florida, if you even count that, because South Florida's defense is horrible. But with that said, SMU's defense is horrible. So Cincinnati at least has proven they'll put up points against defenses that are bad. They might, against mediocre defenses, maybe not, but SMU, like I said, they play super fast. They should force this team. And again, if you're arguing, for Cincinnati winning this game, or if even Cincinnati's going to cover the spread, which is like 11 or 12, it's going to be because Ritter has a big game. Whenever they score a lot of points, he always has a big game. So, that's kind of why I like Ritter. And I think that you're not going to get him at super ownership, because I think, Tony, like you mentioned, I think a lot of people are like, fuck this team. They suck. I don't want anything to do with them. Yeah. This is a good spot for them, though, from a DFS standpoint, from an actual game standpoint, to prove, if they were to bitch slap SMU, if they happen to win hypothetically by 35 today, every question mark goes away from this team. In terms of, they've sucked for this long, because when they had to play good, they absolutely destroyed a good team in this conference. So we'll see how it goes from a narrative perspective, though. I do think Cincinnati.
In my Ritter stacks, I'm putting Trey Tucker and Josh Wiley with them, the two value pieces in that game. They've been the most kind of the consistent guys the last game or so, I think. So that's the ways I'm looking to stack that team up if I'm stacking up Ritter.
And G-Sauce Snyder asked you, what's your best bet? I know you mentioned the Alabama team total. Maybe is that it, or you have?
I like Alabama. Just lay the wood to Arkansas today. So Alabama minus 20.5 would probably be my best bet of the day. I don't usually lay big chalk like that, but I see Alabama just opening a can of whoop ass on these guys.
And speaking of that, Tony, what is your thoughts? Because you have Ohio State. I know we talked on DFS, but we could talk on betting for a moment. We have Ohio State in an almost identical spot to last week, where they were a big favorite against Purdue. Purdue was the chalky underdog, if you will, and now Michigan State. And now Michigan State's like the chalky underdog. The Purdue game was weird, though. Purdue was driving the ball. They were keeping close, and they just started fumbling. Maybe Michigan State does that. Maybe they don't. But Michigan State goes down two scores here, and they kind of remove Kenneth Walker from the game entirely. I wouldn't be crazy to think Ohio State just routes this team. But again, your Ohio State played a near perfect offensive game last week. Hard to imagine they'll follow it up with another big offensive game, identical one, if you will. But what's your thoughts on it? Do you lean which way? You lean the dog or the favorite?
Yeah, I think Ohio State's going to keep trying to put up numbers, just with the Heisman situation, with just how Ohio State is. I think they try to churn some numbers, and they impressed me last week. I think Michigan State is bad, though, so I could see more of this whooping coming, honestly.
I think it's the same thing, though. Like I think we discussed on the Tennessee-Georgia last week. Like if you want to bet Michigan State today, I think you're just better off betting their team total over because Ohio State is going to score a ton of points today.
You brought the great point up last week about it. Like there's just no reason not to. You might win both anyways, but yeah.
Yeah, you could split it if you'd like. It's just there's just not a scenario where this game is going to be, 35-17 Ohio State win. Like it's going to be, if Michigan State covers, it's very likely to be like a 35-50 type of score where Michigan State scored their points and that was why they covered. Just hard to imagine Michigan State covering but not scoring points today because Ohio State's going to get theirs. Yeah. So I gave out the best bets I won. We talked through some of the games in the chat. I mean, any final notes? Tony, any final notes you want to give? Maybe a bet you want to give out or a DFS play you're high on today?
Wish I could. I unfortunately am rushing a little bit for the people. I wasn't even able to get my player pool up here. But no, I mean, I don't have anything I love, but I'll probably put something up on the site. There was a few games in the afternoon that I had written down, but I need to check the numbers and stuff before I officially throw them out there.
Yeah, no worry. And Snyder got you guys Bama minus the wood, which I actually like that play. I think that for whatever reason, like people don't like laying these kind of points with Bama in these types of games against teams that have a little more respect in the SEC, but it never seems to matter. And Bama's another team, you talk about needing style points. They do need style points because if they lose to Georgia, it'll be very difficult for them to make it into the 4-game ship. So yeah, they're going to need style points in games like this one today, to sway people. But I guess an interesting point. I just don't see a scenario where Bama doesn't get in. To me, Bama is the only team that can beat Georgia.
Yeah,
they're going to have to lose twice, right? Like 2 more times.
Yeah, they'd have to lose. They have to lose one of these games, and then they'd have to lose to Georgia. Because even if they lost one of these games but beat Georgia, I still think they're in. So, yeah, I think it'd be very difficult for them not to make it, in my opinion. And then when you add in the fact that the committee loves to put Alabama in and the narrative that they might be the only team that could even beat Georgia, especially if they play them close. Like if it's a 3-point game and they lose and it's back and forth, undoubtedly they're going to put Bama in. Undoubtedly. So we'll see how that goes. But either way, thanks again for joining, Snyder, Big T. Wish you guys all the best of luck with the DFS and the sports bets. And I gave you guys a few bets as well. Snyder gave you a few bets as well. And then Tony, of course, gave good DFS perspective along with Snyder. So look, folks, as always, thanks again for watching. Be sure to gamble responsibly, stay safe, and run pure, folks. See you next time.